I'm speaking from the experience of doing work with Campaign Against Hate Speech, which is a volunteer-run collective, which was established about 3 years ago in 2019 and 2020 beginning. And over the last few years, we've been documenting, monitoring, as well as filing complaints and taking legal action against the different kinds of hate speeches we see across Karnataka. And in our experience, we see that there has been a certain kind of targeting against of Muslims through different kinds of speeches that are made. So I can take you back to the example of 2020 when there were students, dissenters who were arrested, and there were speeches made and bounties placed on their head of 1 lakh rupees, saying that if somebody were to kill them, assassinate them, murder them, then they would be paid that amount. And the our Kannada TV media channels basically played these kinds of speeches without offering any comment, and this was something we saw across Kannada media channels. And so we see that and that progress. So I will basically speak to you about four different time periods that are important to look at in the Karnataka political context to be able to understand hate speeches. The second of which is Tablighi Jamaat and Corona. So while there was the outbreak of Corona, all of us know by now that the targeting that happened of the people who were traveling for the Tablighi Jamaat gathering and the blame that was placed on them singularly for the transmission of Corona, we saw that this was extended and extrapolated to the entire Muslim community, and this is not being said out of the air. We saw this happen on channels such as Times Now, News 18 Kannada, Asianet Suvarna, as well as print newspapers such as Vijay Karnataka, Star of Mysore. And in one particularly egregious incident, we also saw the Star of Mysore print an editorial article which said that all bad apples must be removed from the basket, referring specifically to the Muslims. And this was sort of the big way in which Islamophobia, hate speeches, almost genocidal calls were made using the mediums of TV media as well as print media. And while looking at the role of political leaders and elected representatives, we must also look at the role that the Kannada media, both TV and print, have played in amplifying hate speech and giving space to it. So this is the second phase of work that we can speak about. The third phase, according to us, in our tracking and in our work, was the phase of the anti-conversion law. So much before the anti-conversion law came in 2021, from the March of 2021, you saw channels doing consistent sting operations, exposés, rather calling them that and alleging that they were sting operations and exposés, going and entering prayer meetings, small prayer meetings, which are not organized church meetings, right? These are small meetings that happen in homes. Entering these spaces, making the claim that there are forced mass conversions happening across Karnataka, giving numbers to it, relying on the statement of MLA who's now not been given a ticket, Gulihatti Shekhar, and him making the claim in the legislative subcommittee that 15,000 mass conversions, 10,000 to 15,000 mass conversions have happened in his constituency, which was later debunked. That actually, in fact, there were only 44 conversions that happened in the constituency. And this was something that the Tehsildar had done a survey and reported. And all of these conversions were done on their own accord, right? So, but what did you see actually happen on TV media over there? In these 9 months, up until December, when the assembly session was held, you saw in 9 months TV media take the role of actively manufacturing consent in the minds of people by giving legitimacy to the claim that there are forced mass conversions happening across the state, and these forced mass conversions threaten a particular religious community. And if you are from that religious community, you must be concerned, and this concern must manifest into you taking action. And what does this action mean? This action means you go and file criminal complaints against them under the laws of IPC. You blame them and you beat them up, and you take law. You basically save yourselves from this kind of threat that is being posed to your religion by taking action in different formats. And so you saw the anchors, specifically the Digvijay news anchors, speak very directly in a way to the Hindu audience. And in that sense, while talking about the law, completely misinterpreting the law of the Stanislaus judgment of Article 25, which talks about the freedom to propagate, freedom to practice and profess, and while completely turning a blind eye to the fact that every week there were attacks on Christians that were happening in the name of forced mass conversions. So this is the third big phase that we see in Karnataka politics. The fourth phase is that of the hijab, which became a huge national issue, and it was for all of us to see when we were opening our news channels at that point of time, that as the interim order came, on the day of the interim order and immediately after the interim order, this is when the decision as to whether hijab can be permissible within, to be worn within the particular educational institutions had not been taken. The matter was still sub judice. The interim order was widely misinterpreted by the media to go ahead and go to educational institutions ranging from schools to PU colleges to professional degree colleges to all of these educational institutions which were not under the ambit as per the matter in the High Court, and basically impose an hijab ban by virtue of relying on the interim order. So instead of playing a role of actually getting legal experts, actually getting the court to interpret the order in a way that the interim order does not, in that sense, affect the rights of education, right of choice of the Muslim girls, they in fact went ahead and imposed a blanket ban across the state in different districts. What we also saw were extremely worrying images of young students being chased, chased and asked to remove the hijab, and for reporters trying to get their bite in that moment. And despite us trying to speak to 3 channels in person and asking what is it that is allowing you to do this kind of coverage, on what legal, moral and journalistic ground are you thinking it's okay and permissible for you to enter education institutions, we received absolutely no response from them. And some of them even relied on the fact that it is because of TRPs and it is because that, oh, this is correct, this is what the High Court had said, in fact. So this is the fourth major pattern in the Karnataka political context one must understand. And the hate speeches that intersperse these times are of what the speech that was made by Pooja Veerashetty, by Chaitra Kundapura, the speeches that are repeatedly made by Pramod Mutalik. Recently, it was the speech that was made by Muniratna regarding conversions in Christians, Ishwarappa regarding how he does not want Muslim votes. And so you see that there is almost a back and forth rallying that happens between 3 stakeholders. One is the media, 2 is the elected and political representatives, and 3 is that of the fringe organizations, as they like to call it, the right-wing organizations who provide them the substance of these hate speeches. So you see that in this convoluted way, all 3 parties come together to consistently dehumanize and derogatorily speak about an entire community in Karnataka. Actually, one has to go back to the speech that was made by our Chief Minister, Baspiraj Bommai, where he says, when a journalist asked him about what his response to such kind of actions in context of Mangalore when he was there for a press reporting was that when there is an action, there will be a reaction to that. And that action-reaction statement, one can see that immediately after that, you do see a rise in incidents of hate speeches. And also something that we often leave out of this context and conversation of hate speeches is the conversation of hate crimes. It is not that it stops with this making a hateful speech that attacks somebody's dignity and attacks somebody's citizenship, but it also has far-reaching real consequences when it comes to it transforming into violence, in transforming as crime and taking that manifestation, right? So as far as the accountability is concerned from the state, we have filed a series of complaints to the DGP. We have filed a series of complaints to the district level monitoring committee as well as the state level monitoring committee, which is responsible for all channels that don't fall under the basically that don't voluntarily sign up for regulation. So they are all under the district level and the state level monitoring committee. And the chairperson of this state level monitoring committee is in fact the police commissioner. So there has been no active proactive measures that are taken by the state. In fact, as the Indian Express report that we were talking about also, they've in fact withdrawn 382 hate speech cases. One has to look at the veracity of these orders, look at how these orders can be challenged in court, and they must be challenged in court because hate speech cases have far-reaching consequences for the public at large, right? So that instead of actually taking accountability steps and measures, they have in fact withdrawn cases across Karnataka. Happens, say, for example, in DJ how the Facebook post was not taken down for a certain period of time, how FIR was not registered, how the police was willfully not taking action immediately, and there was a delay in their response, which led to what happened in DJ Halli, and then the mass incarceration that followed of juveniles, of young Muslim men who were in the region or who stayed there in the particular area and then being picked up under UAPA and then charged with UAPA, right? So it is a tool of information and misinformation that they do use to play on a particular kind of sentiment. So it's really to understand narratives and the value of narratives at this point in time, and how different kinds of, even if it is not fake news directly, a framing of information, how does that play into narratives that they use to build on certain sentiments, whether of victimhood or of hate directly. Yeah.